You know, it's just absolutely extraordinary, because that's like the smile on the Mona Lisa. That's the most famous bit of the whole work.
Within the cliché is, in fact, the most wonderful, wonderful painting.
It has such a powerful meaning for the whole world, and to actually have it in the context of this church with the other paintings that we have is going to be a tremendous source of, I think, spiritual strength for people.
St. Joseph's is a busy East End church. Masses will continue throughout the painting of the ceiling. An inventive scaffolding design is needed to allow the artist to work without disturbing the congregation. This is the same problem Michelangelo encountered. He too needed specialist scaffolding at the Sistine Chapel in 1508. The job of designing it fell initially to his rival, Bramante.
The Vatican architect, Bramante, came up with this ingenious scheme of drilling holes in the vault from which you'd suspend ropes to hold the scaffolding. So I said to him, Bramante, that is a brilliant idea. You are a genius. Just one question. What happens when we take the scaffolding down? Great big holes in the painting. Oh, don't worry about that, he said. We'll sort that out later. Perhaps he thinks I'm going to sprout wings or something, I don't know.
It was Michelangelo himself who came up with the solution. His ingenious idea was to brace the scaffolding between the walls. Leo consults engineer Nick McLean about doing the same at St. Joseph's.
There's an amazing sketch by Michelangelo that he did where it shows him in a kind of a stepped sort of structure, and we can't have any supports directly underneath us because that's not what he did. Now, what I want you to do is to work out a design based on that. That's not going to break my neck because I'm very scared of heights. Sounds silly, but...
no, it's not silly. He would have started by saying, OK, there is the shape. It's curving. I need to be a certain distance from that. Yeah. And so the steps that he has drawn here are natural follow-on from that requirement. Yeah. And then we know that we cannot have supports down to the ground because this thing is going to be in place a very long time and the church has to function. And it leads automatically to our truss design, and in engineering terms leads naturally to the shape.
And it's all going to be very strong.
It's all going to be very strong, and it's also going to be quite stiff, so that as you're trying to make your delicate little paintbrush strokes, it doesn't keep swaying underneath you.
I feel Michelangelo's abilities as an engineer have altogether been underestimated. He was the doer. Leonardo da Vinci was the ingenious thinker, imaginer, but Michelangelo was a person who actually accomplished and carried them out. And the scaffolding is just one indication of Michelangelo's true interest in engineering problems and his ability to solve them in the most logical and practical way.
1, 2, 3.
It's pretty solid to me.
The time has arrived for Leo and Fleur to see the scaffolding for the first time.
Oh, wow. Look at that.
Well done.
Extraordinary.
Now they can begin the daunting task of painting the fresco. They will use the same techniques and materials as Michelangelo, and will work at the same rate. This gives them only a week to complete the scene.
It was a huge undertaking. Ordering and mixing the paints, slaking the lime, preparing the plaster, deciding on the content of the paintings, executing the drawings, transferring the drawings to the ceiling. Huge. And I did it all myself.
It's impossible that Michelangelo painted the Sistine alone. Fresco is an enormously complicated endeavor. It requires sort of entrepreneurial skills of organization. One needs to mix plaster, one needs to construct scaffolding, mix paints. So Michelangelo probably had as many as 13 assistants over the course of 4 years.
Michelangelo painted the ceiling with a technique known as buon fresco. This means applying the color or pigment to a fine layer of damp plaster. Before he could do this, the ceiling had to be prepared with several base coats of coarse plaster. This is the first job at St. Joseph's.
This is the basis of all fresco painting. This stuff is quicklime, or calcium oxide, and it's from this that we make most of the materials we need for the painting. If I add water to it, there's a very hungry reaction. This chemical wants the water inside it. And when it gets the water, what happens is it hydrates, and that gives you the basic lime putty. Of course, this would have been done on a really industrial scale in Michelangelo's day. What would have happened now is that stuff would have been left for perhaps 5 years, maybe even 10 years for really good stuff. The longer it's left, the better, because it really turns into a lovely creamy, rich consistency. You can't use it fresh. So what we have here is stuff that's already aged, and this is gorgeous.
Michelangelo's mission was to come up with a design big enough and bold enough to bring to life this huge expanse of plaster. The Pope had set his heart on something from the New Testament.
The Pope's design for the ceiling was poor. There were swirls and swirls of geometric squares and circles, 12 separate panels of the 12 apostles. There was no drama, no scope to study the human form. I've kept the Pope's drawings. They're in here somewhere. I can't find anything. My eyes, you see. I paid for the Sistine ceiling with my eyes.
Michelangelo defied the Pope. Instead of the New Testament, he turned to the Old Testament for inspiration. He began by making sketches. Leo is drawing Michelangelo's Adam to prepare for painting the fresco at St. Joseph's.
Michelangelo wants to create somebody like the first human being, the first one ever. And so it's an ideal perfection, to sort of a extreme masculinity is basically what's on his mind. And the interesting thing about Michelangelo with his models and stuff like that, I mean, they were all men for a start. And in fact, actually that shows up in Michelangelo's work, because most of the women just look like men with breasts, because he may not have seen a naked female form at all.
Michelangelo's really mixed up, isn't he, sexually? I mean, I would love to know what a psychiatrist would say about him now. He's very, very interested in carnal things. There's no doubt about it. He gets tremendous excitement out of flesh.
The male body is a paragon of beauty, a marvel of symmetry, strength, grace. There is nothing so expressive of idea, expression, thought, emotion. In the small mind, it might inspire carnal thoughts. To me, it is God's clay, in which he moulds his own image.
What Michelangelo would have done is do a drawing on this scale, grid it all up, and then proportionately make a large grid of squares on a bigger sheet of paper. So having done the master drawing, the next step is to get a gigantic piece of paper and to draw Adam the size he will be on the ceiling. Now the next stage after that is to prick and pounce. This is a little bodkin, a little sharp point. And what I'm doing here is I'm just pricking through lots of little holes in the outline of Adam. I have a feeling that Michelangelo would have actually had an assistant do this, because it's very laborious.
A fine top coat of plaster is applied to the ceiling, just enough for one day's painting. It's known as a giornata.
So this is the basic plan. These show the giornate, which is the day work that I'm going to complete.
Michelangelo split the scene up into 14 of these giornate. With Leo painting Adam and Fleur painting God, they will each have 7 working days. While it is still damp, the artists can transfer their drawings onto the plaster.
And we'll put this on the ceiling and then pounce through with a little bag of charcoal and make little marks all the way along, leaving the outline, take the paper